Have you ever talked to your friends about the weird and bizarre things that have happened to them? I mean, we all have strange things that happen to us from time to time. My story's a little different, I guess. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's normal to a point. I mean, it started with the most normal thing in the world. It started with a snowstorm. I was trying to visit my family. It was back in December, and I was going from California to Oregon just to go home, see my family. I mean, it was December, it was the holidays, but I guess I should have, I don't know. As I was driving along, I hit a small snowstorm, nothing crazy, just a little bit of snow falling. I wasn't worried about the increase of snow at first, but I mean, I had snow tires. Why should I care? But I guess I should have. But I didn't let my hesitance stop me. I just continued on. But then the snow got much harder. Much harder. I was going up into the mountains, and this made me really nervous. I was wondering if maybe I should just pull off and start sleeping in my car. That seemed like maybe a bad idea. Maybe I should just find somewhere to sleep. Maybe I should just knock on someone's door and see if they could help me. So I started looking for one. I looked all over the landscape, but there were no buildings anywhere that I could see. What should I do? Just keep on driving? See if there's a town nearby or an exit? I just decided maybe that's what I'll do. So I just kept driving for like an hour before I saw anything come up. It was just a sign. Depressing sign. 162 miles to the nearest city. 162 miles. There's no way I could survive 162 miles with this snowstorm. I wouldn't be able to survive 162 minutes, let alone 162 miles. The clock was reading 1:21 a.m. I decided that I should just, take the next turn off. Because maybe I could find a neighborhood that would have some sort of results, some sort of building, anything that I could find. What am I going to do? Freeze to death? That doesn't sound like a very good option. Or maybe just find a house and just see if they'll help. Well, weighing those two options, I decided that I would go with what honestly the only sane person would go with. Try to find a house. Another half an hour flew by and I wasn't able to find anything. Just when I was starting to lose hope, I saw a turnoff in the distance. A small shape started to make its way closer into my headlights, and on further inspection, I decided it was probably a couple of poles that maybe belonged to a fence. When I turned onto the road between the two wooden poles, the ground beneath me felt rocky and rough, like I was traveling on gravel. I didn't drive for too long before I started to see a small cabin creep into my field of view. The lights in the cabin were off, but the place seemed to be in good shape. I parked my car under a tall, wild-looking tree that took residence on the cabin's front lawn. Getting out of my car, I immediately grabbed my extra jacket and put it on, pulling the half-whole mask I wore around my neck up, over my ears and half my face. Decided that, anything to keep warm. As I traveled through the cold, windy night up to what I felt was my salvation, I immediately regretted not getting any gloves for my hands. Despite the irritation I had with my hands, my face and the rest of my body were comfortably warm, so I didn't have much room to complain. I stuffed my frozen hands deep into my pockets. They hurt so bad, and I continued my journey across the cabin's lawn. As I made my way to the door, I noticed something odd. There was no indication of life anywhere. There wasn't even a car in the front yard. Taking my right hand out of my pocket, I knocked 3 times, waiting patiently before saying, Hello? Anyone in there? Sorry to bother you so late at night, but I need a place to stay for just a few hours. Nothing answered my plea for help, so I knocked 3 more times on the door, hitting my knuckles harder against the aged wood, hurting with every single knock. Hello? I said again, a little louder, before continuing with, I'm not here to rob you or hurt you or anything. I need a place to stay for the rest of the night. I promise I'll be gone by the morning. As I finished my sentence, I touched the ornate metal door handle. Noticing that the door seemed to be unlocked, I said in a loud voice, "I'm coming in now. If there's anybody in there, let me know, please." I pressed the metal lever down, finding it a bit odd that the door was unlocked, and opened the door with a little resistance on the other and closing it behind me with about the same resistance, despite the fact that the door looked really old. Looking around the area, I noticed the cabin had 5 rooms: the living room, a small kitchen, an even smaller washroom, and what I assumed were 2 small bedrooms in the back. No lights were on inside the cozy cabin, making it almost pitch dark if my eyes weren't already adjusted to the darkness from outside. I decided the best thing to do would be to search for a light switch, so I took out my phone and turned on my flashlight app to scan the walls. My scan produced no results, however, and at the risk of losing precious battery power on my phone, I decided the best option would be to turn off the light and put my phone on airplane mode. Before turning off my light, I studied the paintings hanging on the wall that I glossed over in my initial scan. Each painting that crossed my sight was just typical landscapes or harbors, things like that. There was a painting that looked like a fox hunt or something like that, but other than that, it was just typical paintings you would see hanging on the walls around an elderly person's home. There was a painting, however, that caught my eye. The painting was small and consisted of what looked like a mother and father, a teenage girl, and a small child. The family captured in that painting were wearing what looked like Victorian-era clothing. I'm only guessing about the clothes. I mean, they could have been from the 1800s or the early 20th century. The point is that the clothing was very ornate and regal. There was something really disturbing about the image in the painting, though. The faces. The faces of each member of the family looked like they were smoothed over with clay. It's kind of hard to describe it, like someone put clay on their faces and smushed it smooth. But the 3 family members looked like they had no facial features at all. I mean, not no facial features. I mean, instead of normal facial features you and I have, the 3 people in the painting had like grooves of smooth flesh where normally you would have an eye, a nose, a mouth. The only person in the painting that didn't possess a blank face was the teenage girl, which had normal facial features for a teenage girl, I guess. Pulled myself away from the painting to take a glance at my phone for the time. My phone indicated that it was past 2 o'clock in the morning, so I decided to go back to the room and check to see if it was occupied. To my relief, the room was vacant. Besides a medium-sized bed, ornate dresser, and nightstand, there wasn't much to go by. The walls were blank besides more sappy paintings to give it a little more atmosphere. Although there was no indication of a heating system, besides a chimney, the rooms were bearable enough that I figured I could just bundle up in my clothes under the covers in order to stay warm. I was only going to be there a few hours anyways, so there wasn't much point in starting a fire. Plus the people who owned the cabin wouldn't be back tonight considering how late it was. I hopped into the worn-out bed facing the open door next to another door I assumed was a closet, and pulled my half-whole mask completely up and over my face. Pulling the fabric of my mask down slightly, I set the alarm on my phone for 4:30 a.m. and put it back down onto the nightstand. I covered my face again and bundled up tightly with a sheet, closing my eyes and letting dreamland take me away until I woke up after what felt like minutes to the sound of scratching. My body froze as I heard the noise over and over and over again, softly coming from the closed door. I tried to relax myself by thinking that all the noise that I heard was just a rat or some other animal that was spending the night in the closet while the cabin's owners were away. Quietly, I moved and shifted onto my back, pulling my half-whole mask down slightly so a little slit appeared, giving me a small window to look at what was out there. I laid on the bed, stiff as a board, with my cap and mask covering my face in such a way that it acted like a visor, giving me a small peek at what was in the darkness. Thankfully, my eyes were still adjusted to the dark, which gave me a small amount of reassurance as I continued to look in the direction the scratching noise was coming from. The scratching continued, louder and longer, for what seemed like minutes, until just like that, it suddenly stopped. Silence. But it wasn't a safe kind of silence. Deafening silence in the room was foreboding, ominous, terrifying. The vacuum of sound in the air was the type of silence that happens in movies just before something jumps out at you. Just when I began to calm myself down, the doorknob to the closet began to jiggle and turn very slowly. My heart was racing out of my chest as I saw and heard that knob turn. Every inch of my body wanted to bolt out of that bed and out of that cabin before whatever on the other side of the door got out after me. I laid perfectly still in the bed, despite the fact that I had adrenaline, nerves, and instincts telling me to get the hell out of there. My eyes widened as the door to the closet opened slightly, and I saw what looked like a dried head attached to an elongated neck pop out of the opening, followed by a skeletal body. The thing that was emerging from the closet crawled on all fours and out of the doorway as it slowly made its way to the bed. I had never before been more frightened. And it stood up, almost touching the roof of the cabin. It turned around and looked down at me. The creature stood there studying me as I peeked through the thin slit in my mask, pure terror swirling around in my mind as I glanced up at the body of the creature. Looking at the creature's skeletal face, I noticed that it had no eyes in its eye sockets, which led me to believe that it couldn't see me, even though I could see it. Just when the idea of it not being able to see me started to give me a little comfort, the creature began to speak. The creature whispered softly as it continued to watch me, and then began to speak again. It has no fear of me. The creature continued to say it in a hoarse tone as it began to breathe loudly, continuing to look at me and gripping down on the edge of my bed. Feeling the creature's bony hand touch the edge of my bed caused my brain to go into what could only be described as panic mode. The only thing that stopped me from jumping up was the thought that maybe the creature believed I was dead or asleep and wouldn't attack. How can it not fear me? The thing said through clenched teeth before loudly gasping and suddenly pulling back with its mouth open in an expression that seemed like fear. It has no face, the thing whispered to itself as it continued to back away. It has no face, the creature said again, but this time louder than before and slightly more threatening. It has no face, the creature shouted as it backed off further away from the bed. I heard the thing breathing loudly quickly before calming down and slowly returning to the side of the bed, leaning over me slowly. The creature continued to look at me before softly beginning to breathe on my face. I could smell its foul breath even through my mask. The smell was so powerful that it took all my strength not to gag as a reflex to it. In my mind, I made the choice to keep motionless and not do or say anything that could compromise whatever illusion I was giving the thing that was currently studying me. The creature breathed on me again, softly. The stench I smelled from its breath could only be described as pure death, which only strengthened my resolve to stay perfectly motionless. Strange, the thing whispered at me again, leaning in close to me to the point where I could see and smell its decaying flesh. The creature slowly reached for me, its hands slowly moving towards my face. With every inch that decaying hand moved, I couldn't help but feel my situation becoming more and more dire. I thought that this was it for me. The creature would kill me tonight, or take me away and torture me, then kill me, and no one would know what happened to me. No one would find my body out there. No one would know my story. I could feel tears. They were welling up in my eyes as I thought of everyone I ever loved being yanked away from me in this one moment. No face. No face. No face. The creature softly chanted as its hands crept over closer to my face. I could hear the anguish in the creature's voice as it continued chanting over and over as it reached for me. As the creature's long, bony hand crept only centimeters away from my face, I braced myself for the worst, making the last thoughts I would ever have about the people who I loved. Just thought of them. Just as I thought my life was all over, a sudden loud noise erupted from the room, filling the ear closest to the nightstand with a flood of beeps, causing the creature to scream and jump back. As the noise continued, the creature threw itself back against the wall, shrieking uncontrollably in terror as it stumbled back towards the closet. I was dumbstruck for a second before the thought came to me that I had set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., which must have been the source of the noise. I jumped out of the bed, grabbing my phone and pointing the lit-up screen at the monster as the alarm continued to ring loudly. The loud ringing caused the monster to shriek even more in confusion and terror as it retreated quicker as I approached. Seeing my chance, I activated my phone's flashlight and put it on strobe in order to disorient the monster further. No face! No face! No face! The creature shrieked at me as it withdrew to the safety of the closet. I continued to shine my light at the creature. For added effect, I started playing loud music as I continued to jab my phone in the monster's direction like a lion tamer. The thing threw itself into the dark recesses of the closet, and I shoved the door back, locking it after I slammed it closed. The shrieks coming from the monster started to get fainter and fainter, like it was retreating deeper into the house. No face! No face! No. I could hear the creature yell out as it got further and further away. After hearing the last retreating words of the thing that terrified me the whole night, I bolted from the cabin at breakneck speed, jumping into my car and floored it off the gravel road. I was shaking all over as I drove, and when I pulled my half-whole mask further down, my exposed skin was as white as the snow that littered the ground. I was so frightened by the whole experience. As soon as I pulled into the first town I saw, I parked my car and began to sob uncontrollably. The experience that I had just been through would scar me for life. But as I wept in my car in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, I couldn't help but start to laugh a little in between my fits of crying. I got through my ordeal without so much as a scratch on me. Well, besides the mental scars, I was fine. I was alive. I didn't have to worry anymore. Or do I?